Welcome to the Be Wise Podcast. I am your host, Chris Y. Wright. Today, we're going to be talking about the enemy within, some of the betrayal going on at home in regards to this Iran war. But before we get started, please like, subscribe, help me grow the channel. Very important that you make some comments, chop it up a little bit. Doesn't matter. It's just that YouTube is hard. That's my slogan. YouTube is hard. And I think I have a lot of valuable information and valuable takes that can resonate with a lot of you. So go ahead and like and subscribe and do it, set it and forget it. But welcome back to the show. So we're like, 2.5 weeks into this Operation Epic Fury. And while our brave men and women are over there neutralizing a nuclear threat that's hung over this world for decades, we just have a different kind of battle brewing at home. And frankly, it just kind of makes my blood boil. Lately, if you look at social media or, tune into certain progressive outlets, you'd think the United States was the aggressor and the Iranian regime, it was a regime that spent years chanting death to America. And you would think that they were the victims, but before we get started, I want to take a look at a couple of videos, and just so you can kind of see what we're dealing with out here. And it's just kind of, it's nuts. Got all these protesters out there.
No more war!
No more war!
No more war!
Peace now! Peace now! End the war! End the war!
No more war!
No more war! No more war!
A veteran just protested inside the Capitol!
No more war!
No more war!
That's war! No more reign of war!
I mean, really? Really? Like, is that what we're doing now? Even worse, we have content creators actually reporting misinformation about, fallen soldiers and injuries. And that's just appalling. It's kind of like, you have to wonder, where's that worm that's getting into people's brains?
Is running shit down. They are not playing with the United States. I was unfamiliar with your game. The reason why is because the media is not reporting it. I was unfamiliar. I'm sorry, Iran. I was unfamiliar because our media is saying that y'all only took 6 of us out. I didn't know it was 500 plus.
It's almost like he's wishing more U.S. service members were being killed. And he's proud of it. He's like rubbing his hands together, like he's thirsty for murder, thirsty for death of U.S. soldiers. That's just insane. And then here's someone who actually wants our president to be harmed.
So I heard the new leader of Iran wants to take out you know who. And leader of Iran, if you're seeing this for any reason, I just want you to know that most of us are rooting for you. Actually, but I think most of us would like it to be kind of slow and painful, if you wouldn't mind. Okay? Go get 'em, bud.
What the hell? Like, FBI, if you're out there watching, go do your job. Find these people. They live here in the United States. They're a threat. They're dangerous. Listen, freedom to protest, right to protest, peaceful protest, do that. But when you start calling for the death of our leader, the president of the United States, when you start rooting for our troops to be harmed, we have people, American citizens, literally rooting for the failure of U.S. operations. They are celebrating the fact that some of our NATO allies are dragging their feet as if a weaker coalition is something to cheer for. We now have activists and some podcasters telling active duty service members to conscientiously object. They are telling young men and women, the next generation of patriots, to stay away from the armed forces. Candace, Tucker, you know who you are. They are using their super large platforms with millions of followers to bash the president for having a backbone to finally denuclearize Iran and protect Europe and the Middle East from a radical, destabilizing threat. And me personally, I wholeheartedly support the mission. And before you say, well, you're not over there fighting, you're not putting your life at risk, I served my country 10 years in the United States Navy. I have been to the Middle East. I spent a long time in the Middle East, a couple of years. This isn't just about politics. It's about global security. To see people protesting this war while our soldiers are in harm's way, it's not just anti-war, it's anti-American, it's anti-patriot. It's a total lack of respect for the uniform and the mission. Which is a good segue. And speaking about the lack of respect for the mission, we have to talk about the political bombshell that happened yesterday in the news. Joe Kent, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, has officially resigned. Now, for those of you who don't know Kent's background, this man has a serious resume. I mean, I'm going to show you a quick video before we get into that, because I want you to know more about Mr. Kent before you criticize him, as I'm going to do. But we have to talk about it because something's going on in America. Maybe it's the COVID virus finally taking its effect.
The head of the National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, announced just hours ago that he is resigning immediately over the war in Iran. And we just heard from the president, who essentially dismissed it. What's so striking here is that Kent is an ultra-Trump loyalist, someone who supported the president through all three of his campaigns. But now, as someone who knows the threats the U.S. faces, perhaps more than almost anyone, is saying straight out that the president was duped by a misinformation campaign and that Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation.
Well, I read his statement. I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know.
I want to say something about that. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to stop the video when you're not getting good. Candace Owens did a video about this, and the president said, I don't know the guy very well, but I heard he was weak on security. Candace Owens flipped that and said, I heard he was weak. How do you call a man weak who's done 11 combat deployments? That's not what he said. He said, I heard he was weak on security. So I want to clear that up in case you hear some other garbage come out of her mouth about this situation.
Well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it.
In a letter to the president that he released online, Kent wrote, quote, it's clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. His final message, clear, quote, as a veteran who was deployed to combat 11 times and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife Shannon in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people.
And therein lies the problem. He's still mourning his wife. And how did this guy get this job? Like, this is a very high profile job he had. National Counterterrorism Center, the director. You got to be all in when you have a job like that. He wasn't all in. And he was still mourning his wife, he's grieving. And he blamed Israel for that. And now he's blaming Israel again. And why did you draft a letter and release it to the media? This needs to be investigated. Something else is going on.
This is just the latest sign of a massive split inside Trump's base over the war, and it comes as the U.S. grapples with the limits of its military dominance.
Now, there's some confusion about about how Joe wrote that letter, but how it was delivered. And the understanding now, it's been out that he met with the vice president. He and Tulsi Gabbard together met with the vice president on Monday. And the vice president recommended he go see the chief of staff and the president, which I think in this situation would have been quite appropriate, given Joe Kent is a guy that's highly revered. Like I said, the chief warrant officer, Kent, was 11 combat tours, valor and courage and dedication to country beyond question. His wife, his beloved wife, died, I think, in the Syrian operation, leaving him as a widower with two young boys. So Joe Kent's dedication to his country is unparalleled. In this letter, being as controversial as it is, with the content that it has, I think it would have been very appropriate, maybe for the vice president to get him to the chief of staff and get him to the president of the United States so that he could share with the president why he was considering resigning. In fact, why he had drafted a letter.
Why draft a letter, Joe? Why draft a letter? Why not speak to your boss? Why not go to Tulsi Gabbard and go, hey, listen, I'm really struggling mentally with this war. I'd like to step down quietly because I don't want to do anything to harm the president's efforts and your efforts. And she might have said, hey, let's talk to J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance and Tulsi should have been like, hey, let's take it to the president. He'll create some type of story as to why you're leaving. And this won't undermine our efforts in Iran. And it won't undermine our efforts from a PR standpoint with the media. But he did several things wrong. He wrote a letter. So that letter it's there forever. The media, the internet never dies. Okay? Things are on the internet forever. So we'll be looking at that letter for 20 years. The other thing is he did that wrong. He wrote a letter. The other thing he did wrong was he should have had a personal, private conversation with the president. Since he was so MAGA, since he was so supportive of the president for all these years. 11 combat deployments, and this is what you're going to be remembered for. Green Beret, and this is what you're going to be remembered for. I mean, retired Army Special Forces warrant officer. Green Beret, as I said, 11 combat deployments. He lost his wife. She was a Navy senior chief, Shannon. Kent was her name, to memorialize her. And she lost her life to an ISIS suicide bomber in Syria back in 2019. And he said that was also an Israel initiative. Said he was a staunch America First ally of the president for years. But then he walks away. Now, reports confirm that Kent drafted a resignation letter, that's what I'm saying. And he met privately with Vice President J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard. And in that letter, he claims he can no longer, in good conscience, support the war effort. But here's crazy. Here's what's crazy. He's out there telling the press, without Tulsi Gabbard's permission, without J.D. Vance's permission, without President Trump's permission, he's out there telling the press that Iran wasn't an imminent threat. That's treasonous to me. To speak for this administration, working in this administration. And then he went on to say that the president was being misled by outside interest Israel. So I'm going to be blunt. I just feel like Joe Kent was betrayed. That he's betrayed the president. More importantly, he quit on his country. and he quit on the service members currently under his purview. The Officer Tatum, mega content creator, he says this perfectly. I will play the video and then I'll tell you my thoughts.
I didn't waste my time reading that entire statement. I'm just going to say this real quick. I think Joe Kent is a coward. I think he's a coward and he should be ashamed of himself. He should be honored for his service that he committed to this country, but he's a coward for what he did. And then it had nothing to do with Israel. I think what he said about us fighting a war for Israel is nonsensical, but people have a right to have a stupid opinion if they want to. But the fact that you think you a man, you think you doing something, you think it's honorable that you can say, I'm going to resign because I don't believe in this, but the men and women who serve can't resign. You think you doing something. You're not a leader. You're a coward. You are a coward. It ain't got nothing to do with Israel. I don't care what he said about Israel. So I'm not Israeli. I don't live in Israel. I've been to Israel one time. I don't care. But when you are going against your own country and you grandstanding and acting like I'm gonna resign because I don't agree with the war. Well, a lot of people that died for this country didn't agree with wars that we were in. But they wasn't enough a wussy to punk out in the middle of a war. If you're a real man, you will see it through. I hate wussies. You're a real man, you'll see it through. It ticks me out because I hate when dudes act like they, no, you ain't doing nothing. You let your country down. That's what you did. Because I bet you $1 million there's other people in the administration that may not agree with everything. But they're going to stand up and they're going to fight to the end. That means if I disagree with Donald Trump, I'm going to disagree with him in the position that I'm in to make, to make a difference or something. What a wuss. Just like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't like what I'm going to quit. No, you stand in there and you look Donald Trump in the eye and say, this is wrong. Make him fire you. But instead, you punked out like a coward. And all the men and women who may also disagree with the war, they don't get the punk out. They got to stand over there in the barracks. They got to stand over there deployed, away from their family, and they got to fight for this country.
God, I got more to say, but I don't even know if I need to say it. I'm going to tell you a quick personal story that I didn't plan to tell, but he made me think of something. My last couple of years in the military and the Navy was right during Desert Storm. And I always been very political, always kept up on the news. And I'm reading all about how we were getting into this conflict, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, all that. I didn't agree with it. And I was like, I want out. I want out. I was pissed. But I signed an obligation to the United States Navy, to the United States of America, that I was going to serve my time. But I was struggling. I think if you're struggling when you're in a mission that you disagree with, you need counsel. You need consolement and counsel on how you were to move forward. So I requested a meeting with my ship's executive officer. And I was like, here's my mental struggles. I'm in the United States Navy and I want to serve my time well. I don't know what to do. How should I proceed? And by the way, I had a top secret clearance and I worked in communications. So that was very important. Just like Joe Kent has a very top secret clearance. So when you have someone that's struggling with the mission, struggling with America, and they have a top secret, there's no telling what they do. It could be a Falcon and the Snowman effect. If you know, you know. But my point was, I knew that I was in a very sensitive position in my service. So I needed to talk to someone about it. So I went to my executive officer of the ship, who was also, by the way, a Black man, which is very important to the story. Because when I joined the Navy, it was only about 4% Black. And politically and socially, We struggled a lot of times with being part of that organization, but it was a great, great, great experience, and I would do it again. Anyway, I digress. But I went and talked to him, and I said, hey, here's what's on my mind. Here's what I'm doing. And his immediate response was, do we need to pull you out of radio? Because I'm telling you, I saw top secret messages all the time. I got all the information before. I got the information before the captain of the ship. It would come off. We got to read it, and then we would put it in a locked box and take it to the captain. So we got information, top secret information about what was going on in this world, whether it had to do with us or not. Sometimes it was about other nations. It was geopolitics from across the world. And messages were coming across, and we would tear them off, put them in a box, stamp it top secret, stamp it confidential, stamp it secret, whatever, the classification was. And then we would take it. So my XO asked me, XO short for executive officer, asked me, do we need to pull you from radio? Are you comfortable seeing some of the communications? And nope. I said, no, that's exactly what I don't want to do. I'm looking to you to tell me how to proceed, how to move forward in my job. And you know what he said? He goes, this is how I want you to look at it, Petty Officer Wright. Regardless of how you feel about our efforts in the Middle East or what we're doing or what you hear and what you read, there's some things you don't understand and some things you'll never understand. There's some things that are coming from, the towers much higher than you and I sitting on this ship. They're coming from the Pentagon. They're coming from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Department of Defense. They're coming from intelligence in the Middle East. They're coming from intelligence around the world, from Europe, from Asia. We just never know where it's coming from. Know this, though. You signed an agreement to serve the United States of America, not the current president, not the current mission. So you see it through. And if you don't think you can do that, please let me know now before you get yourself in trouble. And what resonated with me is that he said, you're here to do a mission for the United States of America, not the President Bush at the time, HW. You're not here to serve me or this captain of this ship. You are serving the U.S. flag, United States of America, and you're moving on information that you and I we're not even privy to sometimes. So I just wanted to tell that story because when people quit, you just don't get to up and quit because you disagree with a strategic call. If a private in the sandbox decided he didn't conscientiously agree with an order, he'd be facing a court-martial. In the military, like during the time of war, we have a word for people who abandon their posts because they've lost the nerve or their loyalty. It's called cowardice. Historically, the military doesn't take this lightly. Under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, otherwise known as the UCMJ, particularly during a state of war, misbehavior before the enemy or desertion can carry the steepest penalties imaginable, up to and including the death penalty in extreme cases. So while Kent is a civilian, he's a civilian official now, the ethos remains. You stay until the job is done. By resigning now, he's handling a massive PR victory. He's handing a massive PR victory to liberals and protesters, the ones we were just talking about. He's feeding the fire of the anti-American sentiment that is trying to tank this operation. I'm angry. I'm appalled. And I suspect that as the dust settles on this resignation, we're going to find out a lot more about who else is whispering in the ears of our leaders. We need strength right now, not people walking out the door when things get tough. That's where I stand. We support the troops, we support the mission, and we don't walk away until Iran is no longer a threat. I want to know what you think about Kent's move. Is it a matter of conscience or betrayal of the commander-in-chief? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm just not feeling well today. I'm a little I'm a little depressed about all that's going on, but maybe you guys can cheer me up. Comment, like, subscribe. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for listening.